Thank you very much for being here, Oliver. You know, this conference began on Sunday with Jeremy Rifkin talking about the third industrial revolution. A lot of people, including you, are heading from here to Davos talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We can leave the numbering aside, but insurance is a very conservative business. Are you really feeling something that you would describe as the equivalent of a revolution?
Yeah, it's coming, and it's coming very quickly. It's not driven by us, it's driven by our clients. Because every day they can order things in Amazon Prime, today same-day delivery here in Munich. They trade online and they expect the same from us. The reality, however, is we are not yet ready. And
you say you're not yet ready.
We're not yet ready.
And why?
The reality is it's a mixture between internal and external factors. The external factors are very easy. Many of you will not know, but we are a strongly regulated industry. So even if things are things that I'd like to do tomorrow morning and all of my colleagues like to do, we're not allowed to do them. Let me give you a simple example. You write me an email and says, Oliver, I'd like the following information about my investment account. As you may know, we are also the world's third largest investment manager. And I would like to respond to you, but if I'm not certain that the email address that you have is verified in our systems, and I send you data back with confidential information, we'll go to jail.
So you can't do it?
We can't do it.
But startups, fintech companies are trying to do just that.
Exactly right, but there's a difference if we are doing that with 70 billion market cap and people trust us to obey the law, and others are just doing it.
So there's a revolution going on, but you feel like you're somewhat on the sidelines, in part because regulators require it?
Exactly right. And you know, many people in the room can do me a big favor. They can write to our regulators and say, I would like to communicate by email and WhatsApp and Snapchat with Allianz. Make sure they can do that.
Are you allowed to provide them paper to write their letters with?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now I know you've announced a joint venture with Baidu in China.
Yeah.
Will you be able to pioneer these sorts of things in other markets faster than you can here?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Some of the countries, China is a particular example, are moving much faster than we are moving in core of Europe, and sometimes even in America. By the way, some of the rules that we're describing that are being sort of challenged by new startups in the United States, the incumbents can't address either. So it's not just about Europe. We'll have the same issues in other parts of our industry and other parts of the world. And China has been very clear in its new 5-year plan that they want to revolutionize insurance, and you're seeing that. And together with Baidu and Hillhouse, our partners, we're trying to really jump S-curves and deliver a new model. And we have all the regulatory environmental factors ready to do that.
So tell us what that model of insurance is going to look like.
It will be a lot more around what clients want. And I think it's very important to point out that digitalization in of itself for us is not an objective. That's why we said the #1 priority is to understand clients better. Make no mistakes, we were not founded by clients. We were founded by regulators 125 years ago. Actually, until about 20 years ago, we knew only the things we had in a contract about the client. So each of you would be basically a number and a legal contract, not a human being in our systems. That has fundamentally changed. So the new models start with really client needs. And just think about Uber or Airbnb. They're not successful because of their technology. You can basically download most of their technology from the App Store. It's a way to define a better mousetrap, a better solution for a client need, and then delivering that. And that is what we have to do. We have to think not about how do we digitize what we have, but is there a better way to provide the same value?
So I will buy my insurance from an app?
Absolutely. You can do that already today.
No brokers involved?
No brokers involved. If you don't want them in the future, you decide who you want to deal with through what medium.
And how long do you think it'll take for that to come back to this market?
It's already reality here. It's already reality here. We have a number of markets where you can do that. Technology-wise, by the way, it's not a major issue. Often, again, it's a regulatory issue. Yeah. And therefore, make no mistakes, it's very important that regulation and the law moves with technology development, and we're behind in Europe and particularly also in this country.
Do you see any progress, any movement in regulation?
There is movement, but I'm not sure it's always forward.
Yeah. Let's talk about data, because that's been another big topic at this conference, data, machine learning. you can know a lot more about me today than you ever did in the past. You can track if you're writing my auto insurance, you can track how fast I drive, see if I drive over the speed limit or don't. If I'm willing to let you look at that data, are you willing to give me a break on my auto insurance?
Yes, absolutely.
Are there regulatory barriers to doing that?
Again, it's different by country. So there are countries like Italy where you can do that every day, and there are other markets like Germany where that is just developing.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that people understand, and you all know that providing data can actually create benefits both for the consumer and also for the companies. Let me give you the example of new starters. I have a son who's turning 18 very soon. He's going to start roaming the streets. Now, we know that a lot of accidents are caused by inexperienced drivers, and we're not just monitoring the behavior in order to price risk properly. We can create apps on his iPhone or his other mobile phone to basically give him feedback on how he is driving, how he's accelerating, how he's braking, how he's driving around the curves. And if he's willing to listen to the feedback, he can both improve his driving style, dramatically reduce the probability of accidents, and save money.
That could be a little annoying. It's kind of like having your mother in the back seat.
I think most guys should prefer us relative to the mothers, but that's a matter of personal decision.
And what about healthcare insurance? I mean, you could get from my Fitbit whether I'm walking my 10,000 steps every day that would affect the risk of my having serious health problems.
Yeah, I don't want to discourage you from wearing Fitbit, but you shouldn't wear it for insurance. Let me tell you why. Let's look at the facts. You can influence about 1 to 1.5% of total healthcare cost through sports and exercise.
That's it?
That's
1 to 1.5%?
That's it. It's
That's
much more
very
important,
discouraging.
Much more important to have healthy nutrition. That is the most important driver that you can really influence, and a few other things around it. Even smoking is overvalued in terms of, but nutrition is really important, and obviously it doesn't hurt to move.
You could track that as well.
Yeah, but people do it for fun, and they believe it makes all the difference, but it's a little bit like a placebo. The reality is there are many other things. By the way, we know about them already today, but again, if you are selling these gadgets, you're obviously trying to create a different image. So we don't care for that, but what we'd really like to do is help patients, if they want, to really monitor their lifestyle and do whatever they can. What we don't want to do is what people fear, which is to say, I take data like you have a predisposition for cancer, and then use that to price you out of the portfolio. That would be totally unethical, and we would not support that.
There was a report out of McKinsey recently that said of all this data we're collecting, only about 1% of it is being turned into any kind of useful intelligence.
Yes.
What about at Allianz? How far along this spectrum of using data to improve your business practices are you?
I think we're very far advanced in terms of how do we price risk. So in terms of how do we think about what we just discussed, how to price motor insurance, we're very far advanced. Where we're still at the very beginning is try to use data to give clients offers that are much more suitable to their needs. So we have to become and move from a B2B2C business, i.e. working through intermediaries, to also be a B2C company and using client information to customize more. And there we're unfortunately just starting.
Yeah. So let's talk about risks, because that's the business you're in, identifying risks. What do you see, looking globally, what do you see as the biggest rising risks out there?
There are many, and that's our business. And the bad news is that human beings don't always want to hear about risks, right? That's why we are entrepreneurs, and we are successful as a species because we ignore them. Unfortunately, we are the people that have to think about it. The most important things that really matter to us at the moment is what's happening in terms of geopolitics. We have been used to, at least my age generation, that for 30 years the world was getting ever safer, and now we're finding with what you see in the Middle East and others, it's getting less and less safe. We used to have the United States being the winning model in terms of politics, no more the case. You have a G0 world, so there are many things that are happening in geopolitics. And we are also in the business to assess that as one of the world's largest investors, because we are dispatching our clients' money. The second one that is very important, getting in line with that, is to say, how do you make sure that the world is not disintegrating? With all of the re-regulation you see, every country is doing their own thing, which is very bad for global growth. So a lot of economic risk that we're looking at.
More higher today than
Yes, more
5
higher.
years ago? Or
Yes, much higher. And then there is a lot of legal risk. We just talked about it as part of the digital revolution. There's a lot of legal problems that have to be fixed for people to be clear about what they're getting into, because the more value is at stake, the more we'll have the issue of how do we distribute the value and how do we protect it. And that's very important.
Climate change, how high is that on your risk list these days?
It's one of the top 5 as well, and we've done a lot, as you know, in the past to think about that. We've just announced as one of the largest investors, by the way, Europe's largest institutional investor, that will change the way we think about sustainability of our investments. First step was to exit coal, but we have 37 criteria, including corruption, transparency, that we're going to apply to our investment portfolio to make them more sustainable.
Cyber risk, cyber security.
Very important, but just developing. I think people have a hard time to understand, given what we just said about the legal risk, to understand how the world will look like. Let's take an example. You all want the self-driving car in the future. Just assume ISIS is hacking into the system, and on the highway between Munich and Nuremberg, they're going to have 50 cars crash into each other and create a few thousand deaths. Who is monitoring the system? Who's running the system? Who is ensuring the system? Do you want to be in a traffic system where you don't know what happens if that happens? Sorry for the tail event, but tail events become reality. And therefore, we are actually very optimistic about the system, because we can not just insure the driver and the car, we are also the leading insurer today of air traffic control systems. And what you're going to see in traffic is going to be very similar what happens in the air above us. So I'm very optimistic about it, because how many companies do you think can manage and run such a system, let alone just understand it?
But we have a long way to go.
We have quite some way to go.
So you, of course, are also a major investor, one of the largest. There's been a fair amount of talk here over the last couple of days about the need for more venture-level investing in Europe in particular. Could Allianz help in that regard? Could you be putting more money into the businesses that are represented here at DLD?
Yes, we would love to. And just to be clear, there is no scarcity of money that we could put in motion. Again, it's a regulatory issue. On the one hand, all the governments are talking about more investment, by the way, not just in digitalization, also in infrastructure. At the same time, they're putting enormous capital charges against investing in industries. So, go, again, that's my second pledge today for WhatsApps, and you can send to Berlin. Make sure we have the regulation that actually allows us to invest, and for that, the capital charges have to go down. By the way, I would like to applaud Lord Hill and Brussels. On infrastructure, at least, they have reduced, or in the process of reducing capital charges. If you need the money, you want the money, we're ready to give it to you, but make sure that the people you elect actually do what you need to get that done.
You're trying to generate a lot of letters here today.
Letters we don't want. Emails we don't need. WhatsApp is good enough.
WhatsApp, just send a WhatsApp note.
Whatever you need.
Before we came out here, Oliver asked me not to ask about Bill Gross and PIMCO because he's getting tired of talking about it, and it was a year ago anyway. But what I do want to ask that's related to that is that Gross was a founder, an entrepreneur. Yeah. It was his business. Yeah. You were a big institution, and you took it over. Part of what happened there is something that everybody in this room deals with, which is how do you reconcile a founder, an entrepreneur, with the nature of large bureaucratic enterprises?
Yes.
Something you've had to struggle with in other areas.
Yeah.
So that wasn't really a Bill Gross question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, the point is the following, is the way to institutionalization. As investors, we are very, very concerned about how dependent is a company on its founder or founders, and how do you manage the process to institutionalization. That's hugely important. As we can see, even in the successful companies in the Valley, they go through various cycles. The founders leave, then come back when their companies don't work. In the case of Michael Dell, for example, you need to take it private and do all kinds of things. So looking at
Twitter, same with
Twitter is a similar
successful example being Apple.
Yeah, or another one coming back is Google. The point is that it's very important that from an investor standpoint, we really think about not just bureaucracy, as you pointed out, but how do you make a company sustainable? How do you create an institution? And that is a very important issue. And then in that particular case, I think both the founder himself and everybody around started too late to think about succession and stabilization, not just in terms of finding a person, but making a company being less reliant on its founder.
Interesting. So we have just a couple of minutes left, a very short time up here, but does anyone have any questions? I have lots of questions, but if there are questions in the audience, I'm happy to take them. Anyone? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about climate change and what you're doing in that area, because Allianz has made a big commitment there in your, both in your writing of insurance, but also in your investments.
Yes.
Can you get the kind of returns you have to get in that area these days?
Absolutely. I think there is no contradiction between having a sustainable investment approach and getting appropriate returns. It would be very short-sighted. So when you think about the development of the commodity sector, you can see, and if you had enough foresight, how do you react to that? So we've also want to do one thing. Very often we have very motivated non-government organization, NGOs coming and saying, why do you invest in this? Why do you invest in that? And we wanted to get out of this corner to say we have no structure, no framework in how to address these questions. We also don't want to be driven by day-to-day debates. We wanted to have a systematic approach on how to think about sustainable and responsible investment, which, by the way, means we will not make everybody happy. Right? The next guy says, don't invest in oil, don't invest in this, and then we now go back to riding old bicycles. And no more eating meat. Sorry, we're not going to go there. But we'll have, for the first time, a systematic framework to discuss with society, that is our clients, our investors, lawmakers, and regulators. This is how we see the world. Let's talk about it, and then put it into a framework that is, in itself, hopefully sustainable over time.
So last question, but going back to where we started, the pace of technological change is very rapid. The pace of industry change, the potential for disruption in your industry is very rapid. But large organizations like the one you head don't normally move rapidly. How do you, as a CEO, take a giant enterprise like Allianz and turn it into kind of the fast-moving organization that it needs to be to adapt to what's going on right now?
The first thing is not about me, right? We have a lot of very capable people that by now are all convinced they have to move. This is the first step. In the past, you always had people that said it's not coming to our industry. Now everybody knows, everybody in Allianz knows it's coming.
More so than ever before.
More so than ever before, because they experience in everyday life. The second thing is they also know that we can move. Last week, we were awarded for the first time a patent for product design, the first time in financial services, a product design patent and technology patent that we have developed in Italy, and now is a European patent, and make sure that we are able to actually protect our assets, so it shows we can do things. And the third one is then now go through is, how do we get scale? I think the biggest advantage of the great companies in the Valley is not their idea, is the way they can globally scale their idea.
So fast.
And fast. And that is what we'll have to learn, because unfortunately we're still a country by country or business by business organization. So the next step is, how do we reap the benefits of our global scale rather than it being an impediment? And that will be a journey. Now, to answer your question, we need to bring in people from the outside that know how to do that. That is very important. And we, in an organizational and philosophical structure, need to change a little bit between how do I optimize and run the businesses that I have versus the part of the organization that is designing the next, so to speak, of release of Allianz's processes, the Allianz 2.0. And for that, we need harmony in business processes and product architecture. And that is what we're doing at this point.
Very interesting. Oliver Bäte, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good conversation.
Thank you.